All right then. Predicting your mock exam. I'm just going to make sure that I don't have any of my YouTube sound going as we send into most weeks. Okay, so how can you predict what's going to be on your exam? I'm going to give you some advice about that. Mocks are going to be super important this year because it's possible that the exams will be cancelled, and you guys have got the hindsight from the experience of last year's students who had the rug pulled out from underneath their feet. The exams were cancelled last minute, and then it was all of their continuous assessment and their mock results and all that kind of stuff that determined their grade. And some students said, oh, but I didn't do any work all year. I was going to revise for the actual exam. You guys don't have that excuse because you know that it's a possibility. As things stand in England, the exams are going ahead. GCSEs, AS and A-level exams, they'll be delayed by 3 weeks. That is the current line of advice. Obviously, Wales made some announcements last week. Scotland have also, as far as I understand, say the status quo is that exams will continue. It will very much depend on if there's a mad, crazy outbreak again, then it's possible the exams will be cancelled. However, you're best to work on the assumption that you are going to be tested on it, that you are going to get continuously assessed throughout the year, and that any or all of those things are going to contribute to your grade. So effectively, do the best you can, and you will be fine. That way, that's the only fail-safe policy that you have to make sure that you are well represented in your final grade, no matter what happens. So if those mock exams, I mean, mocks are important anyway, and we can talk about that a little bit. Something maybe I'll throw over to Rich and Ronnie, the importance of real exam condition mocks, where you're setting it being set an externally set paper, well, that might be your teacher, might be whoever's setting you that paper. You're doing it in exam conditions. You're doing the whole thing. When you do papers at home, quite often you've got music on, you're at your desk, you're nice and relaxed. You can I'm just going to go make a cup of tea. You might not take it as seriously. So there's lots of value in doing mock exams, either that you set yourself or that are set to you by your teacher.
Yeah, I think.
So any questions from the chat? I'll ask the questions, and we'll just go around the circle a little bit. So any questions that you have about your mocks, how you might know what's going to be on those mocks, anything that you think you should do to prepare, or questions about how to prepare for mocks. And if you know what's going to be on your mock exams and when they're going to be, let us know, and then we can tell you whether we've got any advice about how you prepare for those mocks.
Yeah, and I think preparation is key. And I said it, I was on Instagram last week when, Wales announced they were cancelling exams is the wrong way of putting it. We'll talk about that later. But, I was saying, as Rich just mentioned, the hindsight of last year, make sure that you do every homework to the best of your ability, that you revise for every test, no matter how small, and especially your mock exams, because you never know how and when they're going to be used. And if they're not used, well, that doesn't matter, because you've been working really hard all year and you've been smashing those topics as you've been going through topic by topic, and you're in a much better position when you get to the final exam at the end of the year, whenever they might be, obviously 3 weeks later. So it is really important. And I think revising for mocks, I think a lot of students like, well, you know what, I won't do anything, and I'll just see what grade I'm at where I don't do anything. I'm like, what's the benefit of that? I don't think there is a benefit of that.
Oh, well, the benefit, to be fair, is that you definitely don't expend unneeded energy. So if you are like me and Rich Thompson, and actually you as well, Rich Warburton, and one of my children, then basically it's, I want an A, but I don't want to do too much work for an A. I want to do I'll do what I need to do to get an A, but I don't want to be stupid and do more than I need to do. So a lot of students will use the mock as an opportunity to see where they're at now. Because if you're already at an A, then great, you're already at an A, so you need to do a little bit of work, but you don't know where you're at until you do that mock. So what a lot of students do is use it as an opportunity to find out where they're at now, which is totally fine. But if you find out now that you're here and you want to be there, then you're going to then employ some strategies, right? So you find out you're on a C, you want an A, you employ some strategies, you think, right, I'm going to go through the book, I'm going to You've got no way of testing whether or not those strategies are working.
That was
no way, because you've only got one mock. Right. You've got, it might be working, but it might not be working. So it's a dangerous game because you're not given lots of mocks. If you were given 2 or 3 mocks and they were spaced apart by a month, then fine. First one, just walk in, see what you get, and then, you know, employ some strategies, see if it's getting better, see if it's getting better. But that's not the reality. And the reality is that that mock is your only opportunity to sit a paper in test conditions and have it marked by somebody who actually knows how to read a mark scheme. It's your only opportunity. So I do recommend taking it as seriously as possible, or at least try some revision tactics before and then see if they work, for example. However, you don't need to do that, because you can use the TT method for your revision, which we know works because I've used it for many, many years in college with hundreds and probably thousands of students. And also we've used it with hundreds of students over the last year and a half here in TT. And all of the students that have used it have come back, and hopefully we'll have some in the chat today who can like say that I'm not making this up.
Yeah,
it's a revision method that actually works, that you do have time to do, that is motivating, that is easy to follow, and does actually make your grade go up.
You do have time to do if you're watching this in November, December, January, February, March, even into the beginning of April. If you're watching this the day before your final exam, TT revision method, you need, it's a more accumulative process than a magic bullet that's going to suddenly like flip your world. It's something that you are going to have to work at, but it does work. It gives you very clear, logical steps that you can follow, and so you always know what to revise. One of the major questions we get around exam time is like, how do I revise? What should I revise? And obviously every student's slightly different to some extent, but the TT revision method is going to give you the structure so that you know what's best to revise for you, so that your grade is going up and up and up. Okay, so let's go over some of those things in terms of predicting what's going to be on your mock. So Mohammed, I got your question there. I'm going to come back to that in a little bit, and feel free to ask me again in a bit if we haven't quite got there. So number one, ask your teacher. Your teachers will be setting that mock. So you're well within your rights to say which bits are going to be on. Are you only examining me on the AS content? Are you examining me on which spec points or which chapters of the spec are we going to be tested on? And also, which bits are we not going to be tested on? Are there going to be questions on the practical skills or the math skills, or is it just content based? Or like, is it going to be a full pass paper? If so, is it an AS paper? Is it an AS paper 1, or is it an AS paper 2? Are we doing both? Those, like the basic fundamental details you get from your teacher, because they're master and commander of that. They are in control of what you're going to be tested on, and you need to know that so that you can effectively and efficiently revise. Find out when the test or tests are going to be, so that you know roughly how long that you have to prepare for them. And yeah, how many marks is it, and what weighting are they putting upon it? Is this your only mock, or are you doing a test once a month? Like schools again are going to vary massively in the way they do testing. Some of the teachers this year might be just doing monthly regular tests, so it might not just be a huge giant mock. Is it going to be fully timed conditions? Are you doing it in the exam hall? Are you doing it in the classroom? Again, and in the science lab, actually, it's quite different, because doing a 2-hour paper sitting on a stool is quite different to doing a 2-hour paper sitting in a chair. And those tiny little things do make a bit of a difference. Okay, so that's number one. Ask your teacher, get all the details. Obviously, they're not going to tell you what questions are going to be on the paper, but they will tell you which areas of the specification that the questions are going to be on, and which bits are not going to be on.
Yeah, that's it. I think the more information you can get out of your teachers, the better, because, you know, they might say, well, okay, I'm not including any practical questions in there, which is really important. And that way, you know, you need to focus on the theoretical side of things and avoid the practical questions when it comes to doing papers. Now, I think at that point, you could go away and just start making some notes, or just reading your textbook, or reading your notes, or doing whatever you do. Our advice is, once you know exactly what topics are going to be in your mock paper, you need to go straight in and start doing some past paper questions on those areas. Okay, you need to find out where you are to start with. And this is fundamental to the TT method. You know, you can't just revise everything. Imagine you're a year 13 student and they say, oh, there's going to be some AS content in there as well, and some of the year 13 stuff that you've been doing this year. Well, you can't revise the whole of AS in 2 weeks, right? So our advice is, if you are a year 13 and there's some AS content, do an AS paper 1 in full, do an AS paper 2 in full, and just mark it and then see where your weak areas are. And then you've all of a sudden, you've probably taken down your workload by 80%. You just focus on those areas from AS where you really, really struggled. But if it's just on, let's say you are year 12 and you've only done a few topics, or you're year 13 and it's just going to be year 13 topics, the exam guide in the TT, as a TT member, is going to be your saving grace. Because if you go into the exam guide, you can select, okay, so let's say I'm doing an electrochemistry mock, okay, and that's what's going to be one of the things that's going to be in my mock. You go into the exam guide, you select electrochemistry, and every past paper question for your exam board for electrochemistry is in there, and you work through them, because in there are classic questions that you're going to find from exam papers. Where are your teachers going to get your questions from for your mock? Most likely new spec questions, because it has changed since the old spec. There are some old spec questions that are relevant, but all the past papers for the current specification are in there. And if the questions that you do in the exam guide aren't actually on your mock, which likely they might be, then the ones that you do get are going to be very similar to those questions that you do in the exam guide. So that is your first port of call. Do some questions on those topics that's going to be in your mock. If you're struggling, go and use the content guide. That's when you revise, but you need to know where you start in the first place in order to do so.
Could you two remind me about WJEC for biology and chemistry, which exam board is most similar and how similar is it?
Yep. For me, I would say at least 85% content overlap, maybe 85 with the AQA specification. I don't think there's WJ do some optional units in the end. The reason I haven't really made a course because there's various optional components, and some of those are weird and wonderful. They're basically not covered, but the vast majority of the WJC course is covered in the, I'd say go for the AQA biology one to try it out in the free trial.
Yeah, I would say the same. AQA for chemistry. There are some slight differences. Like AQA doesn't cover the P block, and there's a different type of mass spectrometer in there. But by and large, yeah, I'd say again, 85% of what you need is going to be in there for WJC.
Yeah.
So yeah, when it comes to predicting what's going to be on your mocks, knowledge is power. Be a pain in the bum with your teachers and just ask them all of those questions, specifically what's going to be on it. Obviously, don't make a nuisance of yourself too much, but just make sure you're entitled to know exactly what's going to be on it and what's not going to be on it. And again, the exam guide is your first port of call there. So yeah, classic questions. And you know what? I think teachers are creatures of habit. Maybe if you know anybody from the year above, you can ask them, what sort of questions were on your mock last year? So if you're a year 12 and you know a year 13, then likelihood is they're going to remember, or even, dare I say, still have a copy of their mock they did last year. Who knows? A little bit naughty that, but you know what?
Yeah, if you're being given a paper, if you've been told that you're going to be tested on, like you're going to be literally given an AS paper, then it's probably the 2019 or the 2020 paper. And so like that is, you'll be preparing for that in the exact same way that you would prepare for your real exam, which is, there are things that are more likely to come up. This is one of the good things about the TT revision method, is that it makes sure that every second of work that you put in is going to get you the biggest possible increase in marks, which is quite a difficult thing to structure. When you're doing a revision plan, it's really tempting to just sort of go number of topics divided by number of days and then put them all down. But then what happens is you end up spending one day on something that's actually probably going to give you 2 grades if you can fix it. And you end up spending 2 days on these tiny little things, which are really subtle and may not come up. And you don't know which bits are which and where to focus your time. So by using the TT method and following those steps, you're making sure that every sort of action hour that you do of progress within the content is the best hour you could possibly spend. It's going to have the biggest impact on your grade. So it's hopefully designed to be a stress reducer for you, because you can let go of all of the things about revision that cause a lot of stress. So one of them is Like, how many hours have I got? How many days have I got? What should I be doing? Should I be making flashcards? Should I be making posters? Should I do past papers? If so, what order should I do them in? How many of them should I? All of these questions just removes all of them and says, just do step 1, then step 2, then step 3, then step 4.
Yeah.
Just do that. And it also takes away the stress. One of the things, actually, I was going to mention, because people are asking about it, is the Sunday stuff that we do on Sunday. So the Sunday group is TT Method Support Group, and we have a group of second year students, and everyone is very welcome to come along. You just need a TT membership. You can get a free trial for this week and try this Sunday if you like. And we get together on Sunday evenings, and we're all doing TT Method, but everyone's doing their different subjects. And we talk about how that revision for your mocks is going, what strategies people are using, what progress they're making, specific help on if they're getting stuck at a particular point and they're not sure how to move forward, then looking at their MID sheets that they fill in as part of the method and giving advice on that. And yesterday we had a really good session making personalized study plans for the next 2 weeks for everybody. And everybody's gone off using their study plan over the next 2 weeks to see what progress we can make. So it's a really nice group that you are very, very welcome to come and join in with. It's really, really nice way of supporting each other to stick with that revision on top of everything else in your life.
Yeah, Megan's asking where that is in the course, Ronnie, and I believe it's on any live page, whether it's biology, chemistry, or maths. Any live class page that you'll see in the content guide. It's in the bottom section of that page. So where you normally join a biology, maths, or chemistry live class, it's just underneath there, and Ronnie will be there on a Sunday. And yeah, I mean, you've been making like study plans and helping students out in so many other ways rather than just looking at AS content, Ronnie. I think you're pulling the blinder there.
Yeah, and one thing I was going to say when we're talking about mocks, if you are going to be assessed on all of the AS content and everything you've done in year 13 so far, if you're like, oh my God, don't remember any of that, never going to do that, it's like, that's not realistic. That is what your real exam is going to be on. And so to have that realization now gives you 6 months to do something about it. That is going to happen. If you just get to that point at the beginning of May and you'll be like, oh, I don't remember any of the AS, the exam's not going to go away. That exam does count. It is the one that is going to judge what grade you get, assuming that you get to do the exam. So like, take the mocks as an opportunity to give you some sharp relief over what you do know and what you don't know. And then it gives you, now you've got time to go away and work on those things and make those improvements. Whereas if you make that realization in May, it's pretty much too late. It's not totally too late, but it's going to be a very stressful scrabble, lots of late nights, and it's just more undue pressure. You guys have had a stressful enough year, and with all the uncertainty that's going on, there are some things that are in your control, and that is covering the content and being prepared for the exam. Everyone who's watching this can do that. There are lots of resources. Even if your school is non-existent, then Tailored Tutors, we're here to support you, but there are many other ways that you can do that just using the specification to figure out what you need to know. You can use the textbooks or whatever it works for you. If you don't have a TT membership, then you can get to that point. Outside, it's more work, it's harder, you want your teacher to help you out, but you don't have to have them. You can take control of this yourself. And this year, more than any other, then I'd advocate being aware of what you need to know and when it's best to know it by.
It's so important, I think, moving forwards to, I assume most of you guys are looking to go to university. And at that point, you are more kind of, you have to be more self-motivated and self-driven and go away and do these extra things yourself. So you're putting yourself through that training for university as well. Very good question from Hamza, actually. We've got all the topics that are going to be on the mocks, but is there any way we can predict the type of questions or how big some topics will be in the papers? Now, I know that in the exam papers for all of our subjects, we've done the research and we know that, the weighting of different topics and how important some topics are, because there's always like maybe 16 marks when this topic's not very worth revising because there's only maybe ever 2 marks on this type of thing. But when it comes to mocks, teachers, as I said before, are creatures of habit, and they want to know that you've got a handle on each of those topics. So you can expect, I would say, by and large, a fairly even spread in terms of weighting of those topics in your mock exam. So if it's on 3 different topics, they're not going to do 50% on one topic and then 25 on the other 2. So I would say I would expect an even distribution of those topics within your mock exam. I know that's from experience. But in terms of predicting the type of questions, that's where the exam guide comes in. Okay, because if you look at the different, say, again, for chemistry, atomic structure, you go to the atomic structure questions for OCR, for example, and you can see every atomic structure question there's been in the current specification for atomic structure, and you will see a pattern. And I wager it's the same with biology as well. I'm not sure about maths, Ronnie, but there's only so many different ways they can ask the same question, right? And there's a specific practical. There's only so many ways they can give you the same practical.
I always say the questions don't repeat, but they do rhyme.
In maths, they do repeat. They just do. They are, you can line them up and they're almost identical. In fact, that's one of the good things on the MID sheets for maths, is that for every single question, I've linked it to another question from a past paper, which is almost identical. So that does 2 things. It gives you a chance to, after you've done the question, if you found it difficult and then you work out how to do it, you can then test yourself by saying, okay, can I do this really similar question? And the other thing it does is to reassure you that every single question in that paper was in a past paper from the last few years. So if you can do all the questions from the last few years, then you will be able to do your paper, because there's, most of it literally almost identical I can find in past papers.
Yeah, and that's something that I'll see with biology students. In fact, with the TT revision method, when students are new to it, it's like, but I don't want to repeat the exact same paper 3 days later. I'm just going to remember the answers. It's like, good, because when they ask you that question in the real exam, you'll remember the answer. And this is the whole point.
Plus, also, what students say to us again and again and again with the TT method is that when they do that paper again for the second time, they actually don't remember the answers, and they're quite surprised that they haven't remembered them, and they don't get 100% the second time they do it. And that really shows you about how difficult learning is. So if you look at a question, have a go at it, look at the mark scheme, ask us about it, get your head around it, give it 24 hours, then try the exact same question again, you can't get the answer right, then what hope have you got of getting the answer right in a completely unseen setting? So it really does show you that learning is, you have to put it in and put it in and put it in and put it in and put it in, and eventually, after a number of times that we don't know until we reach it, it stays in. But that's what the method does for you. It makes sure that we go over and over and over and over and over and over until it sticks, and then we move on.
Repetition, repetition, repetition.
With just bearing in mind the time, guys, do we want to address this whole Wales issue?
Yeah, if there's any questions. Well, we had a question about WJC, so I'm assuming that student is in Wales.
And you're in Wales, Rich. So
I am in Wales. Yeah, I'm allowed to go where I want.
Yeah.
Well, apart from England, I can't cross the border, which is about 2 miles one way. But so yeah, I social media is a wonderful thing. The internet's a wonderful thing. And right now, I think just generally speaking, there's a lot of very angry students out there because of lost school time, because of they're moving the exams, how are we going to be assessed? I'm losing school time now, maybe because you're in local lockdowns, or not local lockdowns, but, maybe schools shut or colleges shut. And then all of a sudden you see that, those Welshies over the border, it's like they've cancelled exams. Well, I can say 100% categorically that they have not cancelled exams. Now, you might be wondering what I'm saying there. Essentially, what as classic summer exams, they're looking at them not taking place, i.e. everyone turning up on the same day to an exam hall and sitting the same paper. That's not happening, but they are not cancelling exams. It does not mean that they're not going to be assessed. So there's nobody in Wales that's just getting a calculated or predicted grade. We're not entering that whole SH1T show that we entered last year. So there are still going to be assessments, but those assessments for people in Wales are going to be sat in the classroom. and they're going to be more numerous, shall we say. So there's not just going to be 2 exams. They're looking at starting these smaller assessments, they're calling them, in early spring term. So you're looking probably end of January, beginning of Feb, people in Wales will be doing assessments that count towards their final grade in 2 months' time. Okay, so what would you rather? Would you rather kind of just start doing assessments right now before you even feel ready? Because Welsh students are freaking out right now. It's like, oh my God, my actual exam potentially is going to be just after Christmas. So bottom line is, don't be jealous. Okay, there's benefits and there's drawbacks to this potential system, and they really haven't ironed all the creases out in this yet. So exams are not cancelled in Wales. So don't be calling for the same system in England, because you might find yourself shooting yourself in the foot and having to do an exam at the end of January. So just be careful with that. So I'll keep you updated as to what the score is over here in Wales, but it's not any better than the situation that you guys are in over in England. I can read.
No, and I can see a number of potential problems with that system as well. Asynchronous assessment. I mean, no matter what their best attempts are, there's probably going to be some papers pop up on the internet. If one school's doing it on a Monday and another school is doing the same test on a Wednesday, I'm sure the student room will have the answers to that test on the Tuesday. And then how fair is that? There's all sorts of things that they're going to sort of come across, and they'll try and do their best to standardize these things, I suppose. But yeah, watch this space. I mean, as I said, our advice is keep working, keep taking control of your own A-level, making sure that you've understood topics before you're moving on. You've got loads of time to make sure you've ironed out any kinks. If there's bits that you've covered that you didn't understand, go back. Basically, you're going to have to be a bit more on top of continuous assessment this year, whether you end up doing the final exams or not. But it's not the end of the world.
And I think, we are a constant for so many students out there right now. I don't know about you guys, but in the comments that I've been having, the questions that students have been posing me within the course, our members, they're working very hard. And, I can only imagine it's priceless, actually, having that. I'm just like a button click away, just getting almost an instant answer to my question, or I can just wait until Wednesday, whatever day in the week we do our lives, and just ask the question then, or come to our Monday check-ins or whatever. And it's like, regardless of what happens with local lockdowns and colleges closing and teachers setting work or not setting work or whatever, you've got us as a constant, and I know that's really reassuring for a lot of students out there right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. And any sort of final questions? Anything from the chat, Ronnie? I've been sort of dipping in and out. Sarah or Sarah? Yeah, this week there's some communication stuff happening at TT. If you shoot us an email, if you emailed us on like Friday after work and you've still not got a response, probably we don't have anyone answering the emails over the weekend. So give them a day to, I'm sure they'll see your inquiry, and we'll clear all the weekend messages on a Monday. So if we've not got back to you by the end of today, then by all means send us another email, but it will be in the system and we'll just get back to you today, I'm sure. Any other final questions about mock exams, preparing your time? Any questions about TT? Any questions about, any questions?
I think one of the things that's hard about A-levels is how slow progress is. That if you look back over a month, 2 months, you can see progress. But if you do a 6-hour day, you don't necessarily at the end of that 6-hour day feel like everything is sorted, and that can be really, really stressful. And so I think having, even if it's not the TT revision method, having some sort of structure to your revision, which is flexible, which must be flexible. If you say Monday this, Tuesday this, and you plan 3 weeks in advance or even a week in advance, you're going to be off that timetable if you're a normal human within about 1 day. And then you're going to get stressed. So that timetable is not helping. So it needs to be a flexible timetable that allows you to have good days and have bad days and adjust what you're doing, and allows you to do stuff that's actually going to help you to make progress and doesn't cause you to constantly be second guessing yourself. and constantly, not only are you putting all this work in, you're also worrying that you're not putting enough work in. So like that stress itself is going to mean that you remember less of what you studied, because when your brain is in a state of stress, it doesn't put so much into long-term memory because it's dealing with the stress. It's like dealing with the tiger that might just attack it.
Distraction.
Yeah.
So being aware of those kind of psychological aspects of studying and doing things that are going to mean that you get more out of the time you're putting in. So for example, breaks. Don't work for more than 45 minutes without taking a break. Even if you're doing really, really well. Close the book, stand up, walk away, have a break, come back. Then you're going to get much more out of your revision time than if you didn't take the break. Being hydrated, remembering to keep a note of how stressed you are and try and use breathing techniques or use going outside or something else to just like get it into perspective. At the end of the day, these are really important things right now, but you know, when you're 40, you're not going to walk around every day going, oh, question 4, I didn't get it right because I didn't do enough. You won't even, like, we barely remember even what we had in our A levels, because once you get to university, that's the next thing. Or then your job, and then something else and something else. So yeah, it's a big thing, but if you're stressed, then you are actually reducing your ability to learn. So you are putting time in that you're not getting benefit from. So reducing stress is a really, really important facet of your revision for lots of reasons.
Okay, there's a question from Mohammed that he asked before, and I asked to repost, and you did, so thank you for reminding me. Year 12 mocks coming up. You've done 2 biology topics and 3 in chemistry. You've got your notes. What should you do to make it in your head, stick it in your head, especially for biology? Well, first of all, it depends whether you use TT or not. In TT, all those, the really important words to use for your exam answers to get the marks are going to be in red. So you could just make sure you're really up to date with your key terms, you know how to use them and what they mean. And when you maybe use my question analysis tool, carbs, so that you are structuring your exam answers really nicely. And obviously all that's in the course. I won't go into it in too much detail now. Testing yourself. So once you've done that topic, so test yourself on those topics, and let the tests then determine which bits you know and you feel confident on. And if you find bits that you don't know and you're not confident on, then you've got to ask the question, why? Is it because you didn't know the content knowledge, or was it because your exam technique wasn't up to scratch? Because sometimes you could revise a topic, you could know every fact you need to know about it, but then get some application questions and still not do very well. So it might not be your content knowledge that's your Achilles heel there. So basically, I would say use topic-based question packs and then use the TT revision method. Mohammed, is going to be the fastest way, but because you've only done 2 topics, you can't really use a whole AS paper just yet. Hamza, you asked, are there any specific biology and maths papers? If you're going to get a full mock, you're probably, best guess, going to get the 2019 paper, the one that's not been publicly released, but you might be able to find it somewhere on the internet. Maybe even the 2020 October exam, if your teachers have access to that. So they're probably the 2 most likely papers to get. Fatima asked, can we give a quick summary of the TT revision method? Fatima, I'd say check out the Tailored Tutors free trial is probably best. Do you want to go through it quickly, or shall we? I mean, we're done.
People in the chat, to be honest, have been helping out with that.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, the easiest thing is to go into the free trial and go into the Exambulance, and there is like videos telling you every single step and all the documents. We'll do
a halfway house. I'll show you where it is. And so if you jump into the Tailored Tutors free trial from tailoredtutors.co.uk, you'll see a course, well, depending on your subject, it'll be subject, biology, chemistry, or math, and then the Exambulance. And then in the how it works section, you've got this lesson here. This is if you want to join Ronnie on Sundays for 2 hours to do some action hours, some guided helped action hours on your TT revision method. That's the link to join the live. And then this is what my biology course, you have the same advice from Rich and Ronnie, taking you through all the different steps of the TT revision method, which is a little bit like this. You do the exam. MID you're asking for is the marks I dropped sheet. So for every single paper, we've given you a PDF, which is your marks I drop sheet. So for this question, you mark where you drop your marks, and then you basically use these to, and
also how you drop your marks.
Yeah, for what reason do you drop your marks? There's a big
difference between somebody gets 5 out of 7 on a question and somebody else gets 5 out of 7. There might be totally different things that they need to do to revise from that.
Same with what I was saying to Mohammed, your content, maybe that's because you don't know the content. and you just need to go back and learn the content. It might be that you know the content, but you didn't realize that when that question said justify this, you didn't actually justify, and it was an exam technique error that was causing you those things. So that's the point of those MID sheets. They show you where you're going wrong. So that's that. Any final questions?
What are you doing in your live class this week, Rich?
I was literally just having a little look-see at my spreadsheet for this.
I'm doing some translation. So we did transcription 2 weeks ago. We had a week off last week. So I'm following up transcription with translation and some protein questions for my AS focus. I am doing how to achieve your target grade in my skills focus. So whether that's, whether you're targeting an A star to go to Oxford to do medicine, or whether your target is a D because you need to, that's what you want to do to get into whatever your next step is. Whatever your target grade is, how to achieve it. We're going to timeline it. We're going to put in some action steps so that you know how to plan your time and manage it effectively so that you're giving yourself every possible chance of getting there. My A-level focus is a bit of mitochondria and chloroplast. So basically that's photosynthesis and respiration recap. I'm going to chuck some questions at them as well. So yeah, proteins, how to achieve your target grade, and photosynthesis, and respiration.
Cool. I am on Wednesday, and AS, we had a week off last week, didn't we? So the week before we were looking at covalent bonding, and I thought, well, we need to kind of extrapolate from that and look at electronegativity and intermolecular forces and how that relates to physical properties. Classic exam question. That as soon as you get an intermolecular forces question, there's a physical properties question. So we'll be doing some of that. In my skills focus, we're looking at testing for ions. As always, testing for ions questions. So your qualitative chemistry, precipitates, and your solubility rules we're going to be focusing on in that skills bit. And then lastly, a request from year 13s. More calculations, folks. This time it's on pH. Okay, so we're looking at calculating pH. And if we've got time, if we've tamed that beast, we're going to start looking at some buffer calculations, something that strikes fear into the heart of most chemistry students. But hopefully by the time I'm finished with you, there'll be a walk in the park. Because again, as I said before, there's only so many ways they can ask the same question. So we'll get you prepared for those.
Great.
What are you doing, Ronnie? Maths.
Well, in maths, we have a survey on the lives page, and you vote for what you want. And then I literally I was just looking now to see what we're going to do at 7 o'clock. So I'm going to do a lesson which covers the basis of what everybody said they need help with. So it looks today like we're going to be focusing mainly on mechanics, because there's at least 5 people who've asked for the mechanics. But somebody's asked for logs and somebody's asked for trig, and even though that's only one person on each, it is a really, really important, those are both really important topics to do regularly. So I'm going to drip in a bit of trig and a bit of logs as well. That's first years. Second years I haven't looked yet. Whatever you voted for is what we're doing, and I'll put it on the button so you know what we're doing.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Well, as always, if you're a TT member, you have any other questions, just ask us inside the academy. I'm going to be answering my questions in the next couple of hours. So any raging biology questions, even if you don't have a TT membership, you can start the free trial right now and come and ask me a question, and you'll get it answered probably by the time you go to bed. So yeah, that's everything from us. We'll see you same time, same place next week for our Monday check-in.
Yep, and talking about notes next week. Should your notes be beautiful?
Should your notes be beautiful? You can think about that. In fact, the live is already scheduled on YouTube. So if you've got any questions in advance, you can throw them in the comments and we'll pick them up and make sure we include them in the live. That's it from me.